Hey guys, welcome back to the Calibrate Tools and DIY channel. How's everybody doing today? Hope you're doing well. Man, I tell you, it's hot over here on the west side. It's hot. I don't know where you are, but I'll tell you right now, I don't know if it's a heat wave or something happening over here, but it's all good. We got the beaches and everything, but I don't want to make you feel a type of way because maybe you're living in a place that doesn't have the beaches like I do over on this side. But anyway, guys, let's dive into it, okay? Battery-powered landscaping tools are taking over, right? If you have not noticed, if you walk into the Home Depot down the street and you walk into the landscaping aisle where they have the lawnmowers and all the trimmers and hedges and everything, you will notice that you will not see any gas-powered tools anymore, hardly, right? There's a reason for that. Well, battery-powered tools are taking over, okay? And we're going to talk about why that is and all of that, okay? So I'm sure you guys remember back in the day, at least I can remember when, because I used to cut lawns. I used to mow lawns. That was one of my first jobs / businesses as a 13-year-old back in my neighborhood in Florida. You had to pull that string, man. You had to pull that string to get that lawnmower started. And, sometimes it would start, even if it had gas in it, and sometimes it wouldn't, right? Or you get that big puff of blue smoke, and then by the end of the day, you smell like gas and fumes, right? So you got to deal with the fumes, you got to deal with the pulling the cord, all that stuff. And today, that's not the case. You may look over the fence today and see your neighbor pull out their lawnmower, right? And just press a button and everything starts up. So, I mean, come on, there's no comparison as to the headaches that you would avoid with today's technology, okay? And like I said, that's taking over the landscaping industry. I'm sure like a lot of landscaping businesses and contractors are dealing with, have switched over or are thinking about it. They're not, I'm sure they're still the diehard old school people that, they got to have the gas mowers and gas this and gas that. And they will argue your head off as to why gas is better than battery powered. But when you look at the data, you will see that why in the hell would you keep gas, right? I mean, you have a gas powered engine these days or a 2-cycle motor these days. It just doesn't make sense. So let's talk about it and see what we can get from this. Okay. It says battery-powered outdoor power equipment has been growing, okay, at double-digit rates year over year, annually, for the better part of a decade, while gas-powered equipment sales have been shrinking, or at least they've been flat, right? They flatlined. The first tools in the landscaping industry to make the shift over to battery-powered, which is, makes sense, right? You got the trimmers, the handheld tools, right? The chainsaws, the hedge trimmers, the blowers and things like that. Okay, those are the ones that, like I said, flipped over first. And they now outsell gas in most of the retail stores. That's like if you walk down an aisle in Home Depot, you see a lot of Ryobi tools, maybe some Milwaukee tools, DeWalt landscaping tools. And yeah, the gas powered, you really don't see those anymore. So it's right in front of your face, okay? And that's funny how technology, it starts out small, right? But then you look up one day and that whole old technology is gone away, right? So that's just how fast it moves. And the major manufacturers, they notice this shift, and they don't jump on board right away. They kind of test out the market to see if it's catching on. So because it may, during the R&D phase, everything may look good, but until you actually put it out in the market and see how the average consumer reacts to this new technology, that's when they decide to pour all their R&D, all their money into actually pushing out these product lines. Okay. Okay. So the next in line, as far as landscaping tools that took the longest to switch over from gas powered to battery powered, are the riding lawnmowers and the commercial grade equipment. Okay. And so you have the hybrid models now, and then you have some battery powered. Okay. So it's almost like an electric car where you have the hybrid cars where you have some, it's gas and electric at the same time. Well, you see the same thing pan out in the landscaping industry as well, as far as these riding lawnmowers and stuff like that. Okay, so let's see here. Companies that spent decades perfecting two-stroke engines are now pouring their R&D budgets into battery platforms instead. Some brands have stopped developing new gas-powered handheld tools altogether. So imagine, you're developing these gas-powered handheld tools, the latest version of gas-powered handheld tools. Then this wave of battery-powered everything just sweeps over. The tsunami of battery-powered tools slams down onto your industry, and you gotta shelve all those gas-powered tools that you've been developing, right? That's kind of you'll say, well, that's money down the drain, but I guess they probably factor that into their budget, the new technology coming down the pike, and that they would at some point have to shelve what they've been working on to stay relevant, right? To stay relevant and not go out of business because of everybody jumping onto the battery powered stuff. All right, so let's see. Okay, it says some brands have stopped developing gas powered handheld tools altogether, not because gas doesn't work, but because that's where the growth and the customer demand actually is. Like I said, that's the most important thing when these big businesses decide to go a certain direction, right? They're looking at what the customer demand is, and they have to do it regardless, right? So it's not just homeowners. Cities, universities, commercial landscaping crews are switching over too. Sometimes they want to, sometimes because they're legally required to, and let's talk about that. Wow, legally required. That's a new avenue I never thought about, that it would be legally required to have a battery powered over gas. Okay, let's dive a little deeper. It says for a long time, battery powered tools were a compromise, meaning that you traded power and runtime for convenience. A battery trimmer in 2012 was fine for a small suburban yard and useless for anything bigger. Well, that's no longer the case. Okay, lithium-ion batteries, like I talk about in a lot of lives, they've taken over. Okay, and they've made a lot of these tools a lot more efficient, a lot faster, and they last a lot longer. Energy density, okay, that's another factor that they talk about. How much power you can pack into a battery of a given size. That has climbed steadily. Okay, brushless motors replaced older brushed motors, which means more torque, less wasted energy as heat, and motors that last far longer without maintenance. Okay, a battery platform of today became smarter. Tools now communicate with their batteries to manage heat, optimize power delivery, and protect battery life automatically. Okay, so you have these computers that you're pushing around. All right, just like you have this computer on you every day, taking up all your attention. These batteries not only just deliver power, they also manage the different components of your device. They can read what's going on with it. They can give you advice on what to, they can let you know, I guess, through digital displays or whatever, and protect your tool and actually make your tool last longer. Now, what does a gas tank do? The gas tank doesn't do any of that. Okay, so it's kind of a no-brainer that you would switch over to battery-powered tools of today with all the new, the more advanced battery capabilities that exist on the market today to help. Like, say, if you're a business, you don't want to have to replace your lawnmower every 6 months because it's a guessing game as when it's going to break down. With these new battery technologies, you can look at your riding lawnmowers or whatever tool you have and know when to know when to perform maintenance on it and to keep everything running smoothly and last longer. Okay, so it's just from an economic business standpoint, it just makes more sense. So the result is that today's high-end battery chainsaw, a high-end battery chainsaw can outcut a mid-range gas chainsaw. A battery-powered zero-turn mower can handle several acres on a single charge. Backpack blowers can move as much air as their gas counterparts. The performance gap that used to be the single biggest argument for gas has mostly closed for the average user, and it keeps closing every product cycle. Okay, this matters because it removed the last real excuse. People didn't switch to battery tools because they wanted to make a sacrifice. They switched once the tools stopped requiring one. All right, like the wording there, it makes a lot of sense. Okay, let's talk about the math behind all of this. Okay, battery tools cost more up front. All right, that's the real thing, and it's the number most people fixate on in the store. But total cost of ownership tells a different story, and we'll dive into what it says here. But I can already tell what it's going to say. I used to work in the solar industry, okay, and to get a solar array put on your house, or to get solar, period, that's going to cost a lot up front. But over the lifetime of your solar installation or array, it's going to save you so much more money, right? And that's. But a lot of times when people don't have the money up front, that's when they panic and they stay stuck. But they have payment plans and they have all these different incentives to get it. I don't know if they have it for to get a battery power tool, but they definitely have it in the solar industry. And if you are a business, right, and you're a landscaping business or whatever, it's well worth it to think about investing or switching over if you have not already. If you have not seen the benefits, it's well worth it to start thinking about. So listen as I go along. All right, gas tools need gas and oil, obviously, but they also need air filters, spark plugs, carburetor cleaning or replacement equipment, periodic tune-ups, plus the ethanol in modern gasoline is notoriously hard on small engines that sit unused for weeks at a time between seasons. A lot of my gas tool won't start, type of problems. They go right back to the gummed up fuel systems from ethanol blended gas sitting in the tank all winter. Okay. Batteries, you don't have to worry about that. Okay. They eliminate all of those problems. No carburetor you have to worry about. No spark plug to mess up. No annual tune-ups. Electricity is also just cheaper per unit of work than gasoline in most places. And that gap tends to widen over time, not shrink. And there's a strategy that changed everything for a lot of buyers, battery platforms. Once you buy Band's battery platform, the trimmer, the blower, the power, the chainsaw could all share the same batteries. You're not going to buy a battery every time you buy a tool. You're buying tools that plug into batteries you already own. That single design decision turned battery yards from an expensive purchase into a system that gets cheaper with every additional tool you add. So instead of having to go fuel up at the gas station, which may be a few miles down the road, right? So that's going to take time. And then you got to spend money on gas. Then you got to spend time to get back. All that stuff is eliminated when you have a battery platform, okay? So once all those costs adds up over the years. And obviously, if you compare the two, batteries come out ahead all the time, okay? All right. Here's another factor you may not have thought about when it comes to batteries and gas is noise and health, okay? Now, this doesn't show up on the on a spec sheet, as they say, right? But it's one of the biggest quality of life factors of all. Before we get into this portion, I was a welding instructor for a couple of years, okay? And I'll tell you one thing I did not like about that industry. And even though they have equipment to help you avoid, breathing in the fumes, you're still going to breathe in fumes at some point, okay? And imagine, you're breathing those fumes in year after year as a welder. And a lot of welders, they don't use PPE. They don't use masks. They just get out there and just work, right? And the helmets, they don't stop the fumes from coming in. They're just there to protect your eyes from the light, from the welding. So that is a hazard about that industry. As much as I love it, right? I love the process. I love the science behind it, metallurgy and all that stuff. I'm into all that. But I think that industry holds one of the biggest health hazards out there in terms of fumes and I haven't done the research on how many people have contracted any kind of long-term, diseases or like lung problems from welding, but it'll be well worth it to look into. And and it's the same with gas powered stuff, and that's what we're getting ready to talk about. Gas powered landscape equipment is loud. A typical gas leaf blower can produce sound levels that require hearing protection with regular use. Architecture that hasn't fundamentally changed since these tools were invented. All right. Battery tools, by contrast, typically run at a fraction of that volume. You can hold a conversation next to a running battery mower. Try that next to a gas one. That matters for the person doing the yard work. Okay, less hearing damage, less fatigue, less headaches. But this matters just as much for everyone else. Neighbors, kids, people working from home on a video call. Noise complaints about landscaping equipment have become a real source of neighborhood friction, and quiet tools diffuse that friction almost entirely. Yeah, I mean, even that point right there is a case for the battery. You know what I mean? I mean, imagine not having to deal with that. How many people can identify with just waking up on a Saturday morning by a loud lawnmower or whatever, blower, trimmer, hedger, edger, whatever, outdoors, and you're like, damn, it's a good day to wake up, but now I didn't want to get woken up like this. We all can relate to that. Okay, well, battery powered equipment, landscaping equipment has definitely reduced that problem. Okay, then there's the exhaust problem. Small two-stroke gas engines are notoriously dirty. Okay, and an hour of gas powered lawn equipment can produce more air pollution than driving a car for a comparable stretch of time, because these small engines lack the emissions controls that cars are required to have. So the person actually running the trimmer or blower is breathing that exhaust in directly at close range for the entire time they're working. Kind of like I was talking about with the welding, right? If you don't have the proper masks and all that and breathing equipment. Battery tools produce zero tailpipe emissions and zero direct exhaust exposure for landscaping crews running equipment 8 hours a day. That's not a lifestyle preference. That's an occupational health difference. Okay. All right. So I'm going to skip over that. All right. Here we go. Convenience. All right. This is another reason, right? Another reason for the battery case for the battery. Okay. That we're pleading here. Once people experience battery convenience, going back to gas feels like a downgrade. And here's why. In other words, once you go bad, you never go back. Just when I say bad, I mean battery. Okay. No pull cord, right? Anyone who's flooded with a carburetor, yanking a cord, okay, on a cold morning knows exactly how much friction that this removes. Battery tools start with the push of a button every time, regardless of the temperature or how long they sit in the garage. You don't have to mix any fuel. Two-stroke engines need that ratio of gas to oil. Okay, so getting it in, if you getting that wrong, getting that ratio wrong, that can actually damage the engine. All right, so that's an extra thing you got to worry about with gas powered that you don't have to worry about with battery tools. All you got to do is charge the dang battery the night before. No fumes in the garage. Okay, storing gasoline safely requires the proper containers and ventilation, and it's one more flammable liquid sitting around the house. Batteries, you don't have to worry about that. Lighter weight. Okay, that's another thing. That matters more than people expected to, especially for handheld tools used overhead. Hedge trimmers, pole saws, blowers held at chest height for 20 minutes at a stretch. Okay, battery tools tend to be lighter since they don't have a fuel tank, a fuel engine, a block, a muffler, any difference, and that difference is noticeable at the end of end of any session. None of these are individually dramatic, but put them all together, they really make a difference. Okay. Policy. Reason and number 5, regulations are helping to make this switch over. And this is when it comes to, okay, the legalities and them requiring you to do certain things. Okay. Some of this shift isn't just consumer preference, it's policy, and it's reshaping the market, whether individual buyers want to or not. Some regions have passed restrictions on gas-powered leaf blowers, okay, specifically due to noise and emissions concerns, with certain cities and states phasing out sales or commercial use of small gas engines in landscaping equipment over the coming years. Imagine that, okay? Manufacturers that sell nationally or internationally don't want to build two separate product lines for different regulatory environments. So the practical move is to shift their R&D, their research and development, and manufacturing toward battery platforms across the board, everywhere, and let the gas equipment quietly shrink as a smaller and smaller share of their inventory, their catalog. Okay, commercial landscaping companies are often the first to do this, or to feel this, I should say, since they're the ones directly targeted by municipal noise ordinances and emissions rules in many jurisdictions. Once commercial crews standardize on battery equipment for compliance reasons, it pushes battery tool development, battery tool pricing, and battery tool availability in a direction that benefits everyday homeowners, because now the professional grade gear exists, and eventually it trickles down to the consumer product lines. This is the quiet push, okay, behind everything else in this, that we've talked about. Even someone who has zero interest in environmental policy still benefits from better, cheaper, more available battery tools, because commercial and regulatory pressure pushed manufacturers to build them. It's always that when it comes down to it, right? It's always going to be some kind of policy change, some kind of regulatory impulses that push the market to do what it does. Okay. Sometimes, so when you see these, product lines just disappear, you might want to think a little deeper as to what's going on to cause that. Okay. All right. So let's talk about where gas actually is better, where it actually wins. Okay. So to be fair, gas hasn't disappeared. It won't disappear anytime soon, because there are real scenarios where gas is still the better tool, right? Extended runtime. That's a big one on large properties. Okay. If you're maintaining several acres or running equipment continuously for 8-hour commercial shifts, swapping batteries or waiting for a charge is a real limitation that gas simply doesn't have. You just keep adding fuel. Upfront cost, I talked about a little earlier, is still a factor for budget conscious buyers, especially for bigger equipment like riding lawnmowers, where capacity battery packs add a real cost to the sticker price. Extreme cold can reduce battery performance and runtime, which matters in certain climates and seasons. So you guys in the colder climates, leave your comments down and tell me and below and tell me what you think about this. Do you hold on to gas because it's better in the colder climates, and you say to hell with batteries? I'll be very interested to know that. And heavy duty continuous commercial use, think large scale contractors running gear nonstop all day, every day, still often leans on gas or hybrid for now, simply because battery swap logistics and charging infrastructure haven't fully caught up to the scale of use yet. So this isn't a story about gas being obsolete. It's a story about the use cases where gas is the clear winner, shrinking every year, while the use cases where battery wins keep expanding to cover more and more of what an average person, and increasingly what a professional crew actually needs. So my prediction is that the battery manufacturers, since this is their thing and they're trying to take over the market, which they're succeeding in certain areas, they're going to try to develop battery technologies that can have more runtime than gas, right? Or at least keep up with it, that can withstand cold climates, right? That's probably what they're working on right now, because they got everything else taken care of. So it's very interesting to see where this is headed. Okay, so yeah, where is it headed? So if the current trajectory holds, this is what is predicted, okay? Battery chemistry keeps improving, which means runtime and power keep closing whatever gap remains, especially at the high end for the large properties and commercial equipment. Prices keep coming down as manufacturing scales up and competition increases across the brands and more regions adopt some version of the noise or emissions restrictions we already see in a handful of cities today, which pushes adoption further. And yeah, and I remember in the solar industry, that's a big thing where, the renewable energy has always been a threat to the traditional, energy models like oil and gas. So you have these people in DC lobbying to keep their industry intact and against solar, right? So once again, it comes back to policy, and that's one of the biggest weapons people use in the war, the tech wars. Get it? Tech versus old tech versus new tech, right? Old tech being, say, oil and gas, new tech being solar, wind, and all these other things that are out there, okay? The realistic endpoint is that gas tools vanish completely. There will likely be always be a market for extreme duty, extreme runtime, budget, commercial use. But for the vast majority of homeowners and a growing share of professional crews, battery power tools are on a track to become simply the default. The same way corded power tools gave way to cordless ones in workshops, and the way gas-powered leaf blowers were once themselves the disruptive new upgrade over old-fashioned rakes. Yeah. Okay. So next time you hear a whisper, quiet mower gliding across the lawn instead of a roaring two-stroke engine, that's not a fluke. That's just one of that household's personal choice, and that's a result of a decade of battery chemistry, cost, math, health data, regulation, all pointing in the same direction at the same time. So gas isn't gone, but it's no longer the default. And for most people, most yards, and the growing number of professionals, battery won. Okay, already won. All right, so tell me what you think about that in the comments. What kind of, what are you into, battery or gas? Are you an old school diehard, or for me personally, I think the biggest argument when it comes to this is the noise. I mean, nobody, like I said, nobody likes to hear that stuff, right? The loud motors and all that. We know we need it and stuff like that. But that's the kind of the winner there with everything else, the cost, and all of that. So that's where it is, and that's where it's going to continue to go. All right. So it's for you. Hey, what's going on? It's for you. Jeremy Nguyen, hey, how you doing? How come after using my DeWalt power drill, 2 batteries, when I use it again, like weeks later, both batteries are bone dead? 2 weeks later, they're bone dead? I don't know. That sounds like a manufacturer's problem. You might want to call DeWalt and see what they're saying about that. That's not supposed to happen. Hopefully you had it on a charger. I would assume you did. But yeah, that doesn't make sense. I would call DeWalt up and complain. Anyway, guys, I appreciate you coming on. Thanks for listening. Leave your comments. I'll see you in the next one.